morning, everyone. It is time for Good Morning Corona-chan.
We now have a name for the disease, and it is COVID-19.
SARS-CoV-2, Winnie the Flu, the CCP virus, Boomer Doomer.
北京记者站的常驻记者，武汉的同事们都在抗击疫。
我觉得不是很慌，我觉得国家还是很有组织能力的啊，很重视的，所以我觉得我不慌。
有这个一块3一包，每个人只能买一个，现场刚又在说。
今年很多人都在缅怀一位医生李文亮。
A local doctor, Li Wenliang, tried to alert people about the virus a month before the lockdown, but he was reprimanded by the local authorities. Then he too became sick.
The saddest thing right now is hospitals are closed down. They don't let visitors. So one of my aunts, she got sick. Her family can't go visit her. So she's alone. Just think about like an older person. They don't even know how to charge their phone. The worst scenario is when they pass. What are you going to do?
People like my grandma who don't have Netflix or any kind of entertainment. She lives in a small town. It used to be that she would just cross the road to go to a cafe and have her coffee with all her friends. Since it's lockdown, she can't go further than like 200 meters from her house.
Decisione giusta oggi è di restare a casa. Il futuro nostro dell'Italia è nelle nostre mani e queste mani devono essere mani responsabili, oggi più che mai.
Now a dozen or so towns, as you mentioned, also on lockdown. That means no gatherings, no demonstrations, schools, businesses, restaurants, all shut.
I'm in constant contact with my dad and my sister. She lives here with her family. They're a bit tired.
We are in a period of a different confinement, a new confinement. It's not prison, it's not psychiatric, it's something new, and perhaps it will appear new forms, new media.
France's health minister has confirmed that 2 cases have been identified so far. We understand the first case was identified on Thursday.
Aujourd'hui, nous avons 10 995 cas confirmés par test PCR. Parmi ces personnes, 4 461 personnes sont actuellement hospitalisées, ce qui veut dire que 5 000 personnes sont à domicile confinées.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today at HHS.
Throughout history, pandemics have influenced civilizations and cultural practices. From the emergence of the Black Plague to world wars and the Spanish flu, pandemics have helped shape societal norms. With the evolution of COVID-19 into the modern era, viral and bacterial outbreaks have drawn the world to a standstill and have confronted humanity with the prospect of the destruction of the old world and the birth of the new.
Breaking news. The first death from coronavirus here in the United States. A man in his 50s dying from COVID-19 infection in Washington state.
With the media's focus on fear-mongering, political infighting, playing the blame game, everyday people have taken it upon themselves the task of documenting and chronicling the effects of the pandemic, showcasing real lived experiences through social media, in the process, becoming citizen journalists.
CO stands for corona, you know. VI stands for virus, B for disease, so COVID.
We first heard about coronavirus was this attorney and how he lives in New Rochelle and has an office in the city and didn't know he had it and continued along his day. And that kind of was the initial introduction to what it was locally.
Yeah, I was on my way to Florida actually, and I started to hear about it, but I didn't know too much about it at that time. But I did know that there was some precautions to take when you're flying, so I did have my sanitizer and white mask, and I was able to clean the seats on the plane, and I protected myself.
Suffolk County now, currently, within the last 3 days, had more cases than the state of Florida. So I think it went from like 400 to 4,000 within 4 or 5 days. My stepfather's a retired cop, and he went to Florida. He flew out to Florida because his immune system isn't as strong.
I was in Lower Manhattan for when 9/11 happened. I was teaching in Brooklyn and saw it, and then was staying in Lower Manhattan. And that was more devastating to me personally because it was a sudden blow, and it was violent. It was visually violent. And this isn't sudden and violent. Bigger in some ways, but smaller because you're not seeing the sick people. But we're hearing accounts, and we are seeing them on television, people struggling for breath. So no, I don't think I've ever experienced anything like this.
I just spoke to a friend who lives in Manhattan, and his estimate is that he's pretty sure is that half of Manhattan has it. He says that every 10 minutes someone walks past his window and they're coughing.
I think the weirdest thing about this virus, though, is we don't know how fatal it is, how lethal it is. People are really scared in Italy. My mom and my grandmother who's over there. For some countries like Germany, it seems like it's hardly killing anyone. And then you go to Italy, 10% mortality.
I live in Suffern, New York, which is in Rockland County. The second person in New York State that died from COVID-19 died here. So we're on the map.
I first heard about the coronavirus. It was probably in late December, early January. At that point, it was in China. Nobody was really all that concerned about it yet.
Nobody heeded it at all to speak of. They're like, yeah, whatever, another bug.
I was pretty much at work, and we had to screen our patients a lot more than we normally would have with the travel history, illnesses, and we're kind of taking it day by day at this point.
Well, as far as origin, I only have to go on what I've heard, and they're saying it came out of China, and when you got that kind of population density and that kind of sanitary issues, non-cities and all the outlying areas, every couple of years, a new bug comes out of there, so that's where I'm assuming it came from.
Watching the other countries' reactions, North Korea, it's Taiwan, they just basically shut down everything right away. Russia has no cases, which is another how come their reaction was different than ours.
You gotta sort through all the BS, through all the articles that are accurate, the articles that are not. So I just sifted through until I talked to my mother, who's been a nurse for over 25 years. She finally told me this is something that can be very big and impactful.
As we can't go more than 2 miles away from our houses. We can't visit our loved ones. We can't see each other. I haven't seen any of my mates or my relatives in weeks now. You can only go out for important stuff like groceries.
And ours, I mean, Trudeau's policy has been very New World-ish. No borders, come on in. The reaction is so overblown. People are sitting at home now and they can start doing the research.
We had just bought a whole bunch of toilet paper before it went down, not realizing there was suddenly going to be a shortage on it.
People have been going nuts. There's no toilet paper there. Paper towels are gone. Lysol wipes, Lysol sprays.
Everything's gone. You can't find anything at all. Before everything really blew up, I kind of said to myself, hey, you know what? We should order some stuff. So I had some things, maybe a week before it turned into a big deal, I had already placed an order online. We were able to get some supplies. I already had some stuff in the house. I knew that I wasn't going to be in a really bad position.
The things that we noticed grocery store was short on: paper products, salt, weirdly, kind of an odd collection of stuff, but it wasn't anything we really needed.
A coworker of mine who's older, who is immunocompromised, she said, oh my God, can you order me some stuff too? Within 24 hours, the first shipment came. It was a box of 6 hand sanitizers. I got the first box and I gave it to her. She paid me for it. You get it. By the time mine showed up, it was 1. And then they said, contact us. We'll give you a refund for the other 5. We can't. So just within a 24-hour difference.
You go to Walmart, there's lines for, not now, but maybe 3 weeks ago, there were actually lines to get paper towels and toilet paper, and they would give you one package of each.
Well, over here we've got our version of Walmart would be Tesco. I'm a fucking misanthrope anyway, so whenever I see people, I'm just kind of go away from me. And now Tesco's all nice and spacious, and I can walk around and I can get my things without any problems. And if life was like this all the time, would it really be that bad?
I went to Walgreens today and they had paper towels. There was no cleaning products, no soap. Still, like, the shelves are pretty much empty.
The Walmart, the Target, everywhere you go, the toilet paper is gone.
Listen, the toilet paper is totally ridiculous. I believe people rushed into that matter. You know why? They thought everything was going to be in lockdown and you weren't going to be able to go to the stores.
Never ran out of toilet paper at a grocery store before. He just kind of laughed off. And that's why she's not concerned. She said back then they just used magazines. They didn't have toilet paper back then. Oh, you used a magazine, you rubbed it in your hand until it turned soft, or you used water or something and used that. She's 97 years old. She was alive during the Great Depression. She just doesn't care.
That's how my grandmother actually is. Like, that's why I wasn't going with the hysteria of toilet paper, because I grew up in the Bronx. I grew up in a Puerto Rican Latin household. We ran out of toilet paper, we would get towels and we would wet them and you would clean your butt. Why is toilet paper being the thing that people need most? As long as you have water and soap, you can clean your butt. You don't need paper. As long as the drain works and the water works. If the water works, you can clean yourself.
For $40, you can go to Lowe's, you can make your toilet a day.
Not necessarily that. It's more so, okay, well, if all these crazy people steal the toilet paper, I'm going to have to go out and get some, because if I got to go and I don't have any, I'm going to be screwed.
I was in the store right before all this went crazy, and these two guys damn near fist fought over the last bag of toilet paper. And I didn't know what was going on. Very early March. Those people starting to watch. It's getting ridiculous.
We were going to go get a gun because I heard people talk when this all started. Oh, they're going to start breaking people's houses. They'll break into your house to steal your toilet paper.
That's ridiculous.
Okay? To
That's
steal toilet
ridiculous.
paper and your essentials and all that. I'm
That's
like,
ridiculous.
really? And I started freaking out. So I was like, let's get a gun. Because just to protect ourselves.
So she bought an Uzi.
Luckily, there's enough markets around, so there's readily meat available and everything. I haven't panic bought.
Mostly subsisting on a diet of ham sandwiches and the occasional curry. I live pretty frugally. Usually just fruit and veg as well, just apples, bananas, whatever I can. Coffee, lots of coffee.
Now that the stores are still open, you could get all the toilet paper you want. I think they were just afraid of going into a 30-day lockdown.
The people fighting pitch battles in the streets over fucking toilet paper. That's the apocalypse, man.
Meanwhile, the panic of purchasing toilet paper has reached a new low.
Hey, stop! That's enough!
Did you see that news clip of that college kid on a spring break? He looks like a SoundCloud rapper, but hasn't learned how to figure out SoundCloud yet. They're on spring break, and I don't know, I think it's in Miami. Yeah, man, I don't want to, if I get coronavirus, I mean, it's not going to stop me from partying.
If I get corona, I get corona. At the end of the day, I'm not going to let it stop me from partying. You know, we've been waiting for Miami spring break for a while. About 2 months we've had this trip planned. 2-3 months. So we're just out here having a good time. Whatever happens, happens.
To quote Bill Hicks, I don't think we're losing a cancer cure here. That stuff just makes me just want to curl up in a fetal position and whimper. Oh.
Doing us bad. We need a refund. This virus ain't that serious. It's serious. It's more serious things out there like hunger and poverty, and we need to address that.
It was bound to pop up, but I didn't really think too much of it. Just another virus.
My sister told me that my parents are not taking it super seriously, and my dad is really bummed he can't go to the gym, so he's been going to one of his buddies' houses.
It's suggested that we stay inside, and we do that. We should do that as good people, as good citizens, so we don't get our neighbors sick. It's my choice whether or not I want to be an asshole or not. And yeah, it could kill people, but in California, somebody can go out and spread HIV to people without any prosecution coming towards them. Then why can't I go out and spread COVID-19 to people? Oh, it's only a 1%. The HIV kills you. You're done.
The more news we get, the greater the shock becomes. Yesterday, Garcetti announced that we're going to be in a 2-month lockdown.
The percentage of people that are taking it serious are probably very high. Probably about 80% of New Yorkers are taking this very serious. And then the other 20% is kind of divided between people who are either not taking it serious, not believing it, thinking it's a conspiracy theory, putting themselves at risk and all their family members. And then you have the people who do take it serious, but they're not taking the precautions serious.
I feel that most of people in the States don't stop and look inside and take care of them and see, okay, how I feel with this. Do I like it? Am I choosing this?
I said maybe on a big like dog walk or either just going to the grocery store. Folks just seem to be okay. They seem to be a little on edge. Nothing too crazy, but they seem a little worried about the not everybody's still
seem to be very humble and hey, how's it going?
It's kind of weird, this whole social distance, it causes like a big impact on us. It makes things look much more serious than it actually is. It's just hard to not be able to connect with people.
People at the hospital I was working at, nobody was really wearing masks either. They even asked me personally to transport a possible coronavirus patient. That's not the greatest idea. If they have it, you're going to be spreading it when you move them. And second of all, it's not going to be me.
Planet Earth is loving it right now too. You know, did you hear about Venice? That shit is crazy. How the water, like in Venice and stuff, has been clear. I've been to Venice before, and that water is dirty as fuck.
Today I went to the supermarket and I was queuing up when this woman, she came to me and said like, listen, you're not paying attention to the queue because you're getting too close to the person in front of you. And I was like, oh fuck.
In Texas, it was way more laid back. I was also working for a news station. The only thing they're doing is telling us to wipe down our stations when we use them and basically be 6 feet apart from each other.
They're talking about the government refund. They're talking about the $1,000 that they're going to have in order to pay for rent for whatever reason. And I'm trying to tell people, don't pay rent. Don't believe that your income is the only saving grace and salvation inside of this. You need your neighbors now more than anything. You need your friends and family now more than anything. You need to start thinking locally on a massive level.
That panic and fear is going to do nearly irreversible damage, not to the large corporations, but to families that just made that step up to the next level.
The new police in our mind is not to get close. If you cough to your elbow, not using your hands.
You're going to be going out there and working. There's going to be people who are really going to hustle. They don't have the mindset on how to not have money for whatever reason.
We didn't have to wear masks. We weren't required to do it. They don't wear gloves. They don't wear anything, which was a little hard working for the news. Sometimes on camera, they had to be close to each other. They wipe down the tables, they wipe down the keyboards, but they do forget the microphones.
This lockdown just keeps getting more and more heinous and putting people into a position where they believe that they cannot thrive. And defeating the growth of the virus, it's great. It's absolutely great. But we also have to take into consideration that people will want to continue life.
The high density of New York is a problem, and I think most people realize that. So I think most people are doing what's right, and most people are staying inside and making short trips to the store if they have to. They're staying isolated. I think it's the people who don't really take things too serious that are going out and putting themselves at risk.
I've been quarantined for a month so far, and they just said that it's going to be till May 15.
Once it goes back to 8 p.m., I actually have a letter from my employer. If I ever get pulled over by whatever police, I show it to them. Like, hey, I have to be able to go and travel wherever I need to.
Right now, I can see 1,000 people on a Friday. There's nobody out there. There's 2 or 3 cars, 1 bus maybe, but that's it. And this is very important, something to study and learn about.
I'm starting to get crazy.
A lot of people that are young might think that they're immune, but I have a very close friend, 35 years old, and he was sent to ICU in Brooklyn.
My mom actually had it a couple weeks ago, and she's doing fine now. But it was just so weird because it was just becoming popular, the virus. So my mom having it, she didn't even know that it was COVID-19. They were just like, oh, you have an upper respiratory infection.
2 friends of mine lost someone from their family this week. They died of coronavirus.
Yeah, that was the 8th I got tested. April 8th was a Wednesday. Probably Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, just kind of felt wonky. I had like mild hangover, but I really wasn't drinking. I didn't know. Just felt off. It felt like tired and dog shit.
She went to Mardi Gras with a bunch of her senior friends. She's 61. Literally a few days later, they all got sick at the exact same time with all of the classic symptoms.
When something like this happens to people close to you, it does get a little bit scarier. So
I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I was running a fever and felt feverish. Just felt like crap.
Not even 3 days later, the state, not the local, the state health department calls her and says, hey, we have your file on our desk. You have all the symptoms. Now we have to call you for the next 3 or 4 weeks to make sure you're okay. And if there's anything you need or your symptoms get worse, do not go to the ER, call us.
I drove to work and I'm sitting in a parking lot going, man, it would be really irresponsible for me to go in that plant right now. I'm pretty shitty. And I'm like, screw it. What's the sense of me going to work if I feel this bad anyway? So I called in the parking lot and went home.
What I can say about this is we're all in this together. We're all doing the same thing. I'm at my house, you're at your house, my brothers, my family, people in Europe, people everywhere. We're all in this and we're trying to get it together. I think that's the most important thing.
We share the patio and we are outside. It's almost every day sunny. Yeah, the last 3 days have been raining. That is something that never happened in LA and it's happening right now.
I sat outside and got sunburned today. I fell asleep and had a nap. That's basically what I've been doing for the last 7 days is do something for a little while and then pass out because I can't, just can't function.
Pollution that is everywhere here because of the cars and everything is killing. Not only the plants, the trees, everything. So it's nice.
Obviously, when I ask them, what are they doing? They say they're doing the exact same thing as you. They don't go out. They're trying to give their best. Everybody's trying to work for this.
I kind of get it. Part of me was like, why are these people still outside? A lot of people already have this feeling from the culture that we live in that things are hopeless. And when this came along, it's just like, oh yeah, zombie apocalypse.
This is the moment passers-by say a woman wearing a face mask was attacked in a New York subway station by a man claiming she was sick.
In Australia, I've seen quite a lot of the racism side of things. There's a lot of Chinese in Australia. I see a lot of people speaking out, I see posting things on Facebook. China should be fined, China should have done this, China should do that. That just shows the ignorance of some of Australia.
It's been awful from around that time in January, to be honest, man. It's gotten out of hand and people just acting real ignorant.
The only thing that really upset me about this is just racism towards Asians or Asian Americans, and it's already bad as it is on the daily, even before the COVID-19, but now it's worse because people or races have more of an excuse to take it out on Asian Americans, either harassing them verbally or physically.
Racism is basically discrimination, that my culture is better than your culture. What I do or who I am is better than you.
I think it's probably come from these markets that they've said some sort of virus that's happened because of a combination of different things and then sort of spread. So I kind of genuinely think that that's where it came from. I don't think there's a huge wild conspiracy.
Way before I started hearing about the coronavirus, literally through the news, I love watching the news at home.
The likes of CNN or Fox, and it's the same in every country. Every media machine is owned and operated by the government. Whatever government are in power or being elected to power actually gets their subliminal message passed forward to the masses, force fed to them, especially with the uneducated and manipulated, right? So they fall into that hook, line, and sinker.
Does it help that we have a pretty racist president? I don't know if you've seen his tweet, but he tweeted about COVID-19 and he called it the Chinese virus. So just having someone who represents your country say something racist like that, it just encourages more racist people to come out and harass other minorities.
Someone put on a sign on a neighbor's door saying, you Chinese people caused this virus, get out of our country, you carry disease. Her post is about her neighbor. So it's almost like a second-hand experience.
I've actually never really experienced racism firsthand.
And she explained to me the same kind of thing happened to her. There are people start questioning her. And then actually she was the one who took her own post down because of all the hate and questioning that she got.
I've seen a lot of stories online where people post videos thinking it's funny, but it's really not.
Her instance, she took that picture from her neighbor and posted it. She stood by her experience.
There's one sushi store that's still open. All the other Chinese-owned restaurants have closed. A lot of those shops weren't going to close, but there were a lot of people going in there and blaming them for bringing this disease over from China. You know, if this disease came from a Puerto Rican eating something in the rainforest of Puerto Rico, I would honestly be nervous.
At my cousin's store, this man come in, he was a white man, and he was just talking about the COVID-19, and her employee, who is Vietnamese like me, was there, and then he was just like, oh, these fucking Asians bringing that over, like it's their fault, in front of my Vietnamese coworkers. Just the fact that he said that in public in front of other customers is just so disrespectful. It's so disappointing.
There's another person that had the same kind of post posted on their door, and guess what happened? A reporter actually went out to her door and did an interview. If you don't believe in my experience, or this girl's experience, go watch that video online. You can also question that interview. When you start disbelieving racism exists, okay, then it's hard for me to talk to you. By the way, again, there are Asians who question that kind of experience. This is unbelievable.
People want to point a finger. They need someone to blame, especially people are losing their jobs. They've been in the house way too long. They're starting to have a cabin fever, and they're getting hostile, and they need to blame someone. And when it matches a face, and when we have politicians and our government calling it the Chinese disease and they're putting it out there, people will really fall into the trap of believing this and believing the first source of information they hear in the news and just go with it.
There was this weird backlash that happened against Asian people when this first started happening. They were blaming Asians, and I was like, wait a minute, it was an American. It was a white guy that went over there and brought it back to the States. And then it started slowly festering and festering and festering, of course. The pointing finger thing is silly. The way it affects people is scary because it will diminish populations.
People are saying, oh, well, it came from China. What else are we going to call it? The Chinese virus? But
you can't even formulate your own opinion when you're told it's the Chinese virus. Like, you don't even have time to actually break it down for yourself. You hear that and people run with it.
There are other diseases and sickness that comes from Europe. We don't call it the white virus or the European virus. At the end of the day, it's just racism. You can never defend yourself when it comes to racism. You can't justify racism. It's just wrong. It's like justifying murder. Like, you really cannot justify murder.
If you're a deep thinker, then you hear that and you kind of just put it aside and you're like, I really want to know what this is about. But if you're not and you're just taking things at face value, you hear that becomes your opinion.
That if you see that happening, you should definitely speak up, whether you're Asian or not. It doesn't matter your ethnicity, because I've seen so many videos online of people being racist towards Asian because of the COVID-19, or Black people or Hispanic people, and everyone around just kind of stands there and record and they don't say anything. You need to put a stop to that. You gotta let them know that's not okay, because letting it continue just kind of validates it for them.
What happens when we treat emotion over science? I'm a human being. It happens to me. It's going to happen to me. It did happen to me. I use emotion to make judgment too. But we can change our mindset. We can be better. There is a guy, he's Japanese American, and he has a friend probably 2 days ago being yelled at a bank. And that guy is not even Chinese. That's how racism works.
People won't say it, but if an Asian person walked into the room, walked to 7-Eleven, they would become increasingly uncomfortable. They would space out more than 6 feet. They would treat that person and that individual as if they're carrying the plague. And it's even if it's just subconsciously they're doing it, not even realizing they're doing it.
I personally have not yet experienced this particular racism from COVID-19, but I have been made fun of how you people eat and all that. I have been really stressed this. It's not just from typical for white people. Black, Latino, even fellow Asian. Because Asian is huge, right?
It's the same way I felt when I was growing up. If I was walking too close to a Caucasian woman at nighttime, she would grab her purse a little tighter, she would be nervous, and she may not even realize she was exhibiting those self-defense mechanisms.
Everybody can be racist. I need to call you out. It doesn't matter what skin color you are, what background you have. If you do this, just take a look at yourself. I give you that mirror back. That's all I can do.
And when labels attach, they're just so hard to separate. People they like it, they stick to it, they don't see any other way. If you're Asian, you get stuck with that label. If you're Chinese, you get stuck with that. You have to prove that you're healthy and that you're innocent. And I've known what that felt like, to have to go over and above to make someone feel comfortable just because you already know they're nervous around you.
Diseases have been around human culture for hundreds, thousands and thousands of years. It's just life. It's nature. This is how life works. We put our food and we mix up and mingle our food in close quarters. This is going to happen to all of us.
In a crazy sense of it, I was hoping and thinking, gosh, man, wouldn't that be great if all of us indigenous people, since we already went through this one time with an extreme disease, had some type of immunity, which has no discrimination.
It's affecting everybody. It's not like it's beneficial for one and not the other. It's showing that economy globally.
Diseases like this bring all the darkest things.
And now you're in a country that's your home, but people are treating you like the foreigner now because they're attaching you to this disease, even though you live here.
My ancestry, my parents are Chinese Indonesian, but they grew up in China, communist China. And then I was born in Hong Kong. And then half of my life I lived in America. I have experience living in Kansas with a white family. It's so complicated when you look at one person. So go back to judge that person's personality first. And it's harder.
If the Spanish flu made a return, I would be nervous if this was if this was me in that position.
Great things, beautiful things could happen too. The ugliest and the most beautiful, they pop out in difficult times.
I was actually just in the U.S. a little bit over 2 weeks ago. I was doing a business trip from Portland, Oregon to California. And then by Friday, Trump said that they were closing the borders. So my colleague, he flew back on Saturday. I was supposed to stay an extra week and a half to go on the East Coast. And then I started panicking because the borders were closed between Europe. And by Monday, I was on a flight back to Europe. I was on one of the last flights, at least with American Airlines. It was almost completely empty. It was crazy.
Listen, this is the best time to travel. There's no line. TSA is empty. They're just letting people through. The planes were empty. I had a whole 3 rows to myself. I love it. It's not everyone's hustling and bustling. There's no push. It's simple. It's smooth. And this is the cleanest I've ever seen airport.
They found me a flight that went from Chicago to Madrid. Wow. And then to Brussels. And because Spain's been hit pretty hard as well, quite hard. When you get to the airport, you're like in a scene of Breaking Bad, you know? That's who's checking you at the airport. If they're all masked, they don't want to touch you.
The situation in Italy is different. That required total lockdown. You have something like 3 or 4 different reasons why you can be out. Doing sport, walking your dog, going to help somebody else and getting groceries.
What happened with me is I was locked in Belgium when I came back from the US because the borders shut when I was in Belgium, staying at a friend's house. And I actually just got back to my apartment today on a secret mission to try to jump the border. This is something completely new for me. So I biked back from Belgium. There are a lot of small streets that cross the 2 countries. There was a small road and it was blocked off by barriers. And just kind of check to see if the cops are around and then jump the border with your bike.
The measures got a little bit stricter and now pretty much nobody goes out without a strong reason.
We gotta get used to these changing times, at least for now. Maybe in a month and a few weeks things will go back to normal, but for now it's kind of weird.
In Nicaragua, people are having a really bad time right now. People is infected, people are dying on the streets. I read that yesterday. I was like, wow.
The worst is our president. He's going out, he's going to see his son, he's going to the drugstore, normal life.
We've got to talk about Jair Bolsonaro, president of Brazil, president of the country with the 2nd highest number of COVID-19 cases in the world, and he's now part of that total.
For example, if I hadn't taken the COVID-19 test, I wouldn't know the result, and it turned out to be positive.
My stepfather died 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't see my mother. She's really sad, alone. The neighbors take food to her. That's what she's eating. I can't go see her. The hospital didn't make the test because they're doing only in bad cases. My stepfather died in 3 days when he felt a fever. It was really bad. I couldn't hug him. He was so sad and I couldn't do anything. She's there by herself. Yesterday, she called me. I can't take it anymore. I need you here and I can't go. Really bad. It's really bad.
People don't realize the extent of it until they're actually in the middle of it. The worst spot was really in Madrid. You see the panic and like the workers. You see that they're like keeping their distance. They're really aware of that.
Israel instituted a nationwide lockdown. I was born there and still have a lot of family there. My brother would be sending us pictures of alerts that he was getting, saying that they were telling everybody to stay in their home during these hours, not even going out for a run or anything because they're going to be going outside and disinfecting everything.
I'm a little bit impressed by them because they didn't need anybody to tell them to impose it on them. Italy was going through their worst moments, and Spain which is right beside. The situation is a little bit of disaster, and so I think Portuguese people in some ways, they're like, okay, let's do this before it's too late.
The total of Chile, depending on what city you're in or depending on what province you're in, it's a little bit different, but from what I could see, we're trying to respect everything. Mostly known because the healthcare here is very expensive also. So if you stay at your house, you'll save yourself and you'll save a couple $.
I had read an article that a couple of nurses committed suicide in Italy, too many hours, and wondering if they're protected enough. I think it's a really tough time for people really in the medical field. I mean, like the doctors, the nurses.
There's a degree of validation and vindication with this pandemic because you are all living like I do normally every day, every year. I'm stuck at home. How can I be creative and productive with my time? Everybody else has terrible illness hygiene. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic pulmonary condition that is characterized by mucus and fluid building up in lungs, getting too thick and sticky to secrete. I do breathing treatments every day. I'll just tilt this over and you can kind of see, just to stay healthy without being sick. Starting at such a lower baseline lung function, if I do catch a bad illness, that could really, really knock me out.
My dad has diabetes and my mom's doing chemotherapy right now, so they are very vulnerable to it. And that's what I'm worried about because I'm still working, so I'm just worried I might bring something back to them. My parents would prefer me to stop working, but they know that at the end of the day, it's out of my control and I can't. I'm the only one in my family making money right now, so collecting unemployment would not be as much as I would be making if I was working. So at the same time, I do prefer to just actually working and not being laid off.
I couldn't taste or smell anything for probably 8 days straight. It was crazy. And it takes you a while to realize that you can't taste anything. My brother had actually got groceries for us and he got me a new bag of freshly ground coffee and I'm like, damn, I can't even smell this stuff. Realized I couldn't taste it. Very weird. It's bizarre. I don't like it.
So with COVID-19 happening at the same time, we have to have only 10 people, immediate family only. And if there's more than the 10, then you have to figure out who can't go more on this beautiful girl. She passed on the 14th. She didn't wake up. We're still waiting for answers, so we won't get any answers for about 30 or about 60 days. This goes against the circle of life. When it's all over, we'll have some type of a memorial or a celebration of life for everybody to be able to come back.
My mom is a family physician. She lives in North Jersey right now, but she works in a hospital in the Bronx. Over the past week and a half, she's been asked multiple times if she would be willing to volunteer to go to the COVID unit. She talks about the fact that this is what she signed up for, that she's going to wait until she absolutely has to. She knows and is exposed to deadly viruses a bunch in her job. A lot of these healthcare workers are, and we don't really realize it.
Want to be a tough guy, but I cry a little bit. Nothing we could do. I think I've been fortunate. Even though I have a disability and my background as a Chinese American, as a minority in America, I never felt that kind of helplessness until that moment. That really hit me.
Is the worst yet to come, Dr. Fauci?
Yes, it is.
Can you elaborate?
Well, whenever you have an outbreak that you can start seeing community spread, which means by definition that you don't know what the index case is, and the way you can approach it is by contact tracing. When you have enough of that, then it becomes a situation where you're not going to be able to effectively and efficiently contain it.
It's such a crazy conundrum that we're all in. There wasn't a universal red flag. Hey, you guys, watch out. It was kind of almost dismissed, misled, something entirely different.
I think this is showing the selfishness and the greed of the people who have the most power.
In this time period, I don't know if you saw it 3 weeks ago, all the CEOs and all of these major companies started resigning.
I was reading an article about a couple cases in Italy where they're not even taking those bodies.
They've run out of room at the morgue, but they haven't run out of respect for the dead at Cremona Hospital. The next batch of the lost waiting for cremation are laid out in the hospital chapel before collection. Their families couldn't even say goodbye. They're all in quarantine.
And when you don't have a vaccination for it, and you don't have protocol in place of what people should be doing from the state from the federal government saying this is what needs to happen, blah, 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 you have chaos.
I can say we will see more cases and things will get worse than they are right now. How much worse we'll get will depend on our ability to do two things: to contain the influx of people who are infected coming from the outside, and the ability to contain and mitigate within our own country.
The preparedness aspect is one thing, and so I think it's crazy that, of course, there's these hotspots like New York City and Seattle and things like that that have such a high concentration, and they are taking the most immediate and drastic action that they need to because it's necessary.
This right here is basically
opening up the doors to martial law.
There are other states that lagged in that urgency and even now are starting to face repercussions of that, because where one state might be stay at home, the next state over isn't, because they don't have as many cases, so it's not a problem.
My mother-in-law, as soon as she found out that she had it, she pretty much had to quarantine herself. She didn't feel like going out. She said it felt terrible. She actually got the confirmation from her local doctor, and she's right now in Louisiana about to move back into Florida.
In general, I'm just quite happy to know that there is a very dedicated medical staff here. Ultimately, it's a shambles because it's so undercut and underfunded, and that's a result of the government we have.
For here in Amsterdam, Netherlands, it was April the 6th, and they were going to reassess. And then they reassessed last week, and now it's the end of April. And then at the end of April, I think they'll say June. From June, I think we'll get a better understanding of it. But I don't think they're going to go full scale into everything back as usual. I think it'll be a very soft open on things.
I agree with certain points on certain sides of whatever. A lot of people need to start loving their neighbors again. We don't want a civil war. We want a reformation. And a lot of people have been like, yeah, well, if the soldiers come marching down my street, I'm ready. No, if the soldiers come marching down your street, you shouldn't assume that they're your enemy. That is a very dangerous way to think. That's what's going to cause a problem. That's what's going to get you killed. There are plenty of great people in the military.
The political party in Ireland is Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, and they're kind of the two big ones. If you want a comparison, they're both basically Republicans. Fine Gael probably would say they're like the Democrats, but they're just money-based. They're money organisations. We have several left-wing parties, but it's been just the two of them voted in, year out since we got independence.
It infuriates me because the two main parties that have destroyed and dominated politics in this country for nearly 100 years.
And they've done nothing but slash and cut all the vital services. And on top of that, our Taoiseach is like the Prime Minister. He's what Trump would be in the States. He's a trained doctor, and he happily ensured that all these things got cut.
So this afternoon, let me end with the words of a wise man, some words of hope. In the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it'll shine out all the clearer.
But Leo Varadkar is not my Taoiseach, and Mary Lou McDonald is Ireland's Taoiseach. In my opinion, it should be the next general election.
Faced with the prospect of losing their grip on power, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have circled the wagons. They excluded Sinn Féin and the voices of more than 500,000 people from government formation talks. Cad daoine vóta son ahrú, tá ahrú ag taistil, tá sé thar ann. So today's marriage of convenience is born of necessity, not ambition.
Leo Varadkar is his name. Look him up. He's our first gay mixed-race Taoiseach, and he opposed gay marriage before he came out. We voted in gay marriage in 2015.
They had no mandate with the two parties that were actually responsible for the destruction of this country, trying to have a joint coalition and share power with each other.
Everyone kind of knows he's a scumbag. So the woke thing hasn't really taken off here. It has a bit in drips and drabs, but everyone kind of knows if you're a scumbag, you're a scumbag.
It must be something greater going on in this disease, because they're going to shut down the billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of revenue for sports, music festivals, Las Vegas. The question I keep asking is, who's profiting from this?
It looks like it's a man-made patented disease. Why it was made, who knows? Coronavirus itself is very broad, as I'm sure you're already aware. There's different strains.
It was lab-made, used as a biological weapon in regards to make an economic crash all over the world. Declare war against every country in the world by the Chinese Communist Party.
This virus may become just another endemic virus in our communities, and this virus may never go away. And I don't think anyone can predict when or if this disease will disappear. We do have one great hope. If we do find a highly effective vaccine that we can distribute to everyone who needs it in the world.
People that are going to benefit, it's going to be the people at the top. I'm sure everybody's saying now the whole Bill Gates trying to get people microchipped. And I could see that being a good thing if people weren't going to use it so nefariously.
It's weird. It's not like people went and backed up essentials that they needed. They specifically went on a hard run for the things that Fox News said was going to be up.
People it's going to help is the people that are top making these vaccines.
All governments are in it together. I think it's elitist, globalist, capitalist way of thinking in regards to getting rid of the weak.
And then all of a sudden they took this 19 version as soon as a lot of these Chinese people were starting to revolt and go up against the government. And all of a sudden this disease is released and it puts them into the shadows a little bit.
Human beings are very much pattern-seeking organisms. We are constantly looking for meaning when oftentimes there is no meaning.
When it comes to the mass vaccinations, you're going to barge inside my house because I haven't gotten this vaccination. Like, what are you doing? How are you sleeping at night?
There's this idea with a lot of more conservative types of the fear of the New World Order. Well, that jives with the fear of the rapture.
Respect animals, respect wildlife, respect Mother Earth. Like that, it's time to get real now. We might be the last people to turn off the light.
And not just indigenous community here in North America as one of the 560 or 73 clearly recognized tribes, but indigenous from anybody around the world.
We should listen to the people instead of actually ignoring it and using their position to gain and play.
Information from our cultures, from our peoples, from our ancestors that are intrinsic. They are ingenious and they are quite necessary, especially now more than ever.
It's really the fear of lack of control. It's the fear of change that you're not prepared or capable of going with.
We're on the cusp of some wild shit, one way or the other, but I really think that it's going to define the rest of this century.
Right now, we're at a crossroads. You can definitely see it going one way, but you can definitely see it going another way. One of the side effects of this world quarantine is that people are looking at things for themselves and questioning, which is great.
Historically, when the Renaissance happened, it was a flourishing time of arts and development, intellect, and everything was growing and moving forward. And at this point, I feel like everybody's like, oh yeah, technology is so advanced, we're so far ahead. But sometimes, again, just taking that moment to pause and slow down can really help us solve these problems. And I really think a lot of the solutions to these modern day problems are actually indigenous solutions or older.
And we could, with a massive moonshot, find a vaccine and give that to everyone who needs it and stop this disease in its tracks, will turn maybe what has been a tragic pandemic into a beacon of hope for the future of our planet and the way we care for our citizens and the way we work together to solve our problems through solidarity, through trust, through working together.
I hope they're telling us the truth. How many more people are going to die before this gets resolved? Thank God that we have the first responders, the nurses that are putting their lives out there for other people. I'm sure they have families and they're going home probably freaked out, hoping that they don't get sick or get them sick. That takes a lot.
I hope people start to actually realize this is more important and they need to start thinking about family members and other people's family members.
A lot of really good potential that will come out of this, because when people have a little time to go home and think about things, if they're rational, if they're speaking with their loved ones, if they're actually engaging, which is the thing you should do. If you get scared, you should engage with others. Seek the strength of your community, your support networks, your friends, your family, your neighbors, your coworkers. There is a lot of potential for kind of a reckoning like that.
To be honest, I also feel like this is a good learning process. One of the things that has really humbled me and touched my heart is that you see now people really coming together. Humans are crazy. See now everybody's kind of reaching out to each other. Communities are getting closer. Everybody being more loving and caring and checking on neighbors and cutting people's grass and all this kind of shit.
I see some people on the Nextdoor app and on community Facebook groups trying to rally people toward making masks or making face shields or collecting food for medical professionals who are working around the clock.
So this one has caps on it, and I'm making filters out of coffee filters and salt. You soak the coffee filters in a salt brine and then put them in the oven at a low temperature. They're actually supposedly more effective than an N95 mask. It takes about 2 days to print one of these, so I couldn't really mass produce them, but what I did was open source the design in a couple different groups, so people have been downloading it and printing them on their own printer.
The fact how dedicated people are just to making sure that life can go as smoothly as it can. I think my friend Epi, she's an actress and a singer, and she lives out in a place in Dublin called Crumlin. She cycles around her estate on her bike delivering groceries to her neighbours. That's great that people are willing to do that and they put those services out there and for free as well. Just saying, look, I'm just helping my neighbours. You know, they do the same for me.
We are in this moment that we need to learn to deal with ourselves without any material stuff. Doesn't really matter if we're gonna buy a new pair of jeans or a very expensive pair of shoes, or we are in a moment that what you own doesn't really matter. If you have a boat, you can go anywhere with your boat. So why do you have a boat then?
Sometimes we get lost in the way. What happened to us, it's really important for us to look inside, and we have to be by ourselves in this moment. Sometimes you don't like to be with your thoughts, and the most important thing for me is that people change inside, so then we can change the world.
Find the patterns behind your behavior, find the patterns behind your thought, and then you'll understand a little bit more of what you're made of.
Out of all this darkness, there will come some light, there will be some lessons, there will be some progress that is made. That's why we have stories, that's why we have teachings, that's why we do these things. As they say, history repeats itself. I would hate for anything to cycle through again like this, and hopefully we learn our lesson this time and be prepared, better care for ourselves, but also even caring for the environment in a direct sense. Because one thing I noticed is that the wildlife, Earth, got a good breather for a second.
Yes, this reset that the Earth is doing and all of this healing has to happen to us as well.
Sea turtles are nesting in places that they haven't for hundreds of years. They are recreating that balance themselves, and ironically it's taken a microscopic unit to be able to shift this large-scale balance.
We are super connected with the Earth, so we healing ourselves, taking care of everything, how we eat, what are we eating is super important.
Spending time with your family is fun. Honestly, to see online people videotaping themselves with their family, their brothers, their sisters, their parents, doing silly dances and singing silly songs, that's a beautiful thing. The rallying in my community to help these restaurants and the families that need help, being able to donate, I think that we can really move forward.
When I was driving back from the hospital, I had to see at least 40 dogs and families walking. And I think if anything, maybe it's making people just realize that happiness can come in smaller doses of just normal things such as walking a dog and family time.
I was seeing a lot more people out the house, jogging in parks. So I was driving the other day, I was in Covington, going to my buddy's house, and I seen about 15, 20 people out there having a picnic.
I think maybe we're always taking pleasure by going out and doing things. This is like reteaching and reprogramming our brain that as long as you have loved ones and those close to you, you can still be happy.
Our livelihoods are much bigger than our jobs or our income. Our livelihoods are our well-being, whether it's our physical well-being or our mental well-being. Our livelihoods are our families and our friends.
We're living history. We can do whatever we want. We can take whatever direction we want. And there's a lot of people pushing for a lot of really good ideas.
And we're starting to remember that more as we realize that we're stuck at home and we can connect with friends and there's people that love us and we can still connect with them, or businessmen who are now stuck at home playing with their children for the first time in forever, or even dogs at home who now have their owners always. It's shit like that that reminds us about what really matters in our lives and why we really live, because we don't live and have a livelihood to have a job.
This could provide a lot of momentum for those ideas to appeal to people that have unfortunately been sensitive to collective cynicism that they have been constantly bombarded with.
There's always this hope that even though it doesn't give you the immediate evidence of what you need and want, it's that aspiration that leads you to the place that you need to get to.
Oh, we're here, we're alive, and this is really happening. It's good that something is threatening us and our existence so we can at least perceive that we exist.
I feel lucky. I don't want a tube shoved down my throat and die in a hospital. So I'm feeling lucky.
Keep loving. Keep loving. That's when you think you took a hit and you think it's not working out, that next spot's right around the corner. You just don't see it.
We're all dealing with this day to day. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody knows how many cases are going to come back positive. Nobody knows if this quarantining is going to work. What's the harm in trying to see if it works?
Philosophy, the teachings of indigenous peoples, that we all truly believe and understand that we are all a part of this circle. In Western science, even, we say this hoop is infinite, it's perpetual, has no beginning or end. Western science is the same thing, just in another perspective. A circle is a shape with infinite sides and infinite angles. It means it goes on forever. This is exactly what I said, just in another way. And so, taking that into consideration, once we realize that we are all a part of this world, this is something that is helping us realize that, oh yeah, I'm a part of this world. I can't exist without it. And as much as we try to proclaim that we're the top economy in the world, we are nothing without the rest of the world economy helping us be who we are. And so that contribution needs to become more realized and appreciated.
It was important before, obviously, to have this kind of approach in life and be aware of what you really are and what you're doing here. Yeah, those things were important before also, but now more than ever.
We're all a part of this world. You turn this hoop this way, nobody's above, nobody's below. We're all still part of this hoop. We all need each other to maintain these sides and these connections. If it's lopsided, we can fix it. It's up to us.
Hopefully things are happening underground to give power back to the people, because right now, I mean, it is all smoke and mirrors.
Hoping there's some things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, that we would like to know about, but if we do, it'll hurt the national security of, I'll use this, the white hats that actually have some things in plan that we don't know about.
So what I'm hoping is basically a lot of this sheds light on a lot of things that people have questions about, and also shows a lot of the shadier things that some of these corporations are doing. We can take that and empower ourselves to be able to make better conscious decisions.
The one thing that I think that could happen out of all this is that we all have a better understanding of the bigger picture and our contributions to the world. We are all significant to this world. We all have contributions. We are all valuable, no matter how small you might think you are.
Find something that inspires you and do it. You're at home, you have the opportunity to do it. Nothing is stopping you from feeling good about yourself, regardless of the situation we're living. We need to find at least some hope, love, and self-love. And we find those things within. Distraction, and now no distractions.
If you see anybody that's trying to make a little bit of extra money on Facebook Live and they got a virtual tip jar, to just donate and help them out. I feel like the art that's coming out right now is very important. I want to keep that alive. It's easy to get your spirits crushed as an artist. The encouragement means the whole world.
Nobody can know for sure that they are going to be the one, but at some point in time, you never know what your opportunity is, that you will be at the top, you will be apex, you will be quintessential to the world as far as being able to provide something. That's the one thing that I hope that everybody really comes out of this with, is a better understanding of the world and appreciation of it, first of all, but also a respect for each and every individual in it.
But finally, we've seen something that's so important, so big, and it affects all of us. Hopefully, from now on, we can take things a little more serious. Be more serious about what we want for the future. The one that's affecting us right now, and it's a microscopic virus.
I hope we will see new artists, new technicians, a new audience with this confined art.
COVID-19 is the catalyst for the cultural renaissance that is upon us. People have been left entirely voiceless from the media that has pervaded our homes and our minds for decades. The voices who have molded the masses have betrayed the trust of the very people they claim to represent. Stand up and be heard. You cannot be heard inside of an echo chamber. Your opinion matters. You are not voiceless. In order to make the world a better place, we need to become better ourselves. By working together with one another, whether it be giving your neighbor a helping hand, community outreach, or activism, there is always a way to use your voice. With this newfound awareness, we can begin to create the world we've always imagined. At the darkest point of night, daylight is always closest.
Nothing extraordinary about them, really. Just the magnitude of what they do. To put themselves at risk that strangers might live, and donning masks to keep the virus at bay, as surges of patients are admitted into emergency wards each day. Antiseptic sting of sanitizer drying on open palms as the shrill buzz of updates judders everyone's newsfeed. A pandemic of bad news. The streets are empty as never before, as if in a horror film, but the real horror is the relentless uncertainty of who and how many will be next. as we herald in an era of lockdown, quarantine, covered mouths, prescriptions for isolation, distances kept in the name of health. Remember this, and only this: they are here, working for your life.